Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this video I'm going to be going through what I've been getting up to with the new Brutal and Cunning Kill Team box that Games Workshop sent us through for review. Now, the last couple of months I've been absolutely loving doing some Kill Team projects, and I couldn't figure out what to do with this box. Do I do the Orcs? Do I do the Ratlings? They're amazing. Do I do a whole Kill Team? What's a fun project, but also, you know, an entertaining and potentially useful video? Then I remembered a TV show that I absolutely loved when I was growing up. And that gave me an idea. So let's paint. So as I say, Games Workshop sent us through the box for review, but I also went and picked up that new commemorative series set, the Provisionally Prepared box. I actually picked up a couple of them, one for this project and then one just to have as it is. The Ratlings you can build completely like just as snipers, as if you're using them in a guard army, which I thought was kind of cool. So I want to pick up another set of the Ratlings as well, one for Kill Team, one for this. And I just learned that you can take Ogrins in them as well. So there's some amazing more potential project for the future. But yeah, back to this one. So the A-Team. Could I find enough bits and stuff between these two boxes to achieve what I was looking for? And this is just dirty kit bashing, a bit of fun. I'm really not going to be doing incredibly complicated, talented techniques to do any of this stuff. It was really just a case of having fun and relaxing and just trying to enjoy, you know, being a bit silly with the hobby. I'm not a huge fan normally of like crossing the streams with IPs and stuff, but you got to have a giggle, right? But it was all going to hinge on, could I find enough bits to do it with? And actually the biggest one for me was, I wonder if there was a head with a mohawk. And yes, there was. So straight away I was like, this project could be on here. Because I was thinking about the various different characters, you know, BA, Face, Hannibal, Murdock, and I had to try and figure out in my head what were a couple of really key features that if you glanced at them, you'd get it. You knew what they were. By the way, I'm not suggesting that you take a lighter to your plastic glue. My nozzle always clogs on it, and I find it's the easiest way to unclog it. But obviously, you know, be careful, all the rest of it. I'm definitely not condoning that. Yeah, so I had to go through and figure out, right, can I get enough bits here? This was essentially diving into something without a plan, really. There's been a lot else stuff going on with Colt at the minute, but I really wanted to get this video done. So I sort of kept coming back and leaving and coming back and leaving, and just started to accrue little piles of parts that I thought might work for the various characters. So it was thinking about things. It was like, okay, well, Hannibal, you've got the cigar. B.A. Baracus, you're going to have the mohawk. You're probably going to need the gold chains. Murdock needs to just look like a bit of a wally, you know, a bit crazy. And Face had to be, you know, this handsome, suave, smooth Ratling, which was going to be interesting. So yeah, as I say, I basically just started going through the sprue and snipping off lots of bits that I thought might work for the various characters. And you do get a ton of options, to be fair, in the kit. I think every, I keep wanting to call them hobbits, sorry, every Ratling gets at least one option in the main kit. Often more than one. But one thing I wanted to do was try and lean into that idea of, you know, that the A-Team was like a Saturday afternoon TV show, and yes, they had guns in everything and they shot loads of stuff, but it wasn't gory, it wasn't super violent in that sense and all the rest of it. So I thought I might try and steer away from too many guns involved as well. So that meant going through the set and just pulling off, you know, all the arms and hands and things that didn't have weapons in, essentially. And there was enough bits to start playing around with. So BA here is a good example. What could I give this guy? Well, there was a running, you know, Ratling, a little bit of snipping around the neck. I could fit the different mohawk head on him. Okay, left arm, there's an open left arm, looks like he's running. And then what can I do with the right arm? Well, give him a bottle of milk. That's pretty B.A. Baracus kind of themed as well, right? But it certainly didn't come together quickly, any of this. That's a fib, actually. Face came together really quickly. I just wanted to make a super casual looking Ratling here. You know, kind of look like he was either chatting someone up or you know, just smooth talking someone. So he's got a cup of tea here. One of the open left hands, as if he was explaining something. So yeah, you know, with a little bit of that plastic glue, I'm pushing it's pretty forgiving. You can create pretty much everything you want without any real sort of sculpting skills or anything like that. And, you know, changing the direction a head's looking in, or, you know, some of the key props, that's all you need to do, right? There was no intentions of making these like some display level kill team. It's just a bit of fun to see if I could get them done. And yeah, so here we have the sort of basic team, and now it was just time to sort of finesse the models a little. You know, whilst they weren't going to be display level, I didn't want them to be super sloppy. So if there was any serious gap filling and stuff like that, this was the time to do it. And the main area I had the issue with the gaps was where I'd use different arms on different torsos. Frustratingly, on the Hannibal one, I didn't need to use that rifle. That particular sculpt has a right-handed rifle out to the side like that. I just didn't notice it. I was that lost in snipping all the bits off and doing it. I didn't even think to check that it had it, but I didn't notice that till I was best away through painting him. And I'm just going to use a bit of modelling putty here. My recent Tamiya one's run out. I've used this Vallejo one, or I picked it up because it's got that needle nose applicator, which I thought could be quite fun to give a try. And essentially it's like crushed up plaster or something, this. So you just pop it on, I smoosh it in, then I just wipe the excess off with a cotton bud. Leaves a very, very fine surface that you can sand, and, you know, looks really, really decent. You know, takes very little time to dry as well, if that's something that's you know, a consideration for you. But yeah, it's, you know, it's super easy to use, and I use it very often when I'm hobbying. That and plastic glue are kind of my go-to sculpting putties. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to those of you that support us over on Patreon. It's been an amazing year for Colt. We've been able to achieve things that we've wanted to for so long, things like the MPO, so the in-person miniature, so the online one we've got running at the moment, which I'm helping judge at the minute. We've got thousands of entries on that. And also our Dea Guard 2 Kickstarter. So this is our second range of 54mm fantasy miniatures that's going on at the minute. I'll pop down in the description. If it wasn't for the support you guys give us on Patreon, you know, that allows Andy and I to do these videos here each week on Patreon each week, and all the other projects, yeah, we wouldn't be here. So we hugely appreciate it. And if for any reason you can't support us on Patreon, then your likes, your subscribes, your comments over here, I really value those as well. They do make a big difference to channels like ours. You know, and I love reading them. I love engaging with you guys. It's I feel very fortunate, you know, that I'm able to enjoy reading the comment section of a YouTube channel. But the crux of the matter here was the biggie, right? The cigar. The issue I had was that the Mohawk head that I was going to use for BA also had a cigar in it. And that's not going to work for me. The cigar's too obvious a prop, right? It can only really be for Hannibal. So I now had to try and extract a cigar from a tiny little Ratling. So snippers, scalpel, tiny cuts. Yeah. I found the way, I've said this in a few videos before, but the way the models seem to be sculpted now, it almost feels like they'd have sculpted the mouth and then they sculpted the cigar and put it in it. So if you're careful and you sort of remove the bit you want to remove, very often underneath it there is enough material there for you to basically blend in or recreate what it was that was underneath the thing you've removed without too much difficulty. In the past there may have just been a void or just a lump. It feels now like it's very hard to articulate, but I hope that sort of makes sense. So whilst I was nervous, I was fairly confident that this would work, providing I didn't slip and, you know, slice half his face off and then not be able to obviously get another one, and the entire video would be ruined. But once I'd sort of cut it out where I want it to be, I'm going back here to using Tamiya Extra Thin. This is a really useful glue, plastic glue if you're working with plastic kits. Very thin, and it just sort of helps smooth off and melt the areas of plastic around it. And I was really happy. In the end, I think it's ended up looking like he's just sort of growling. You know, he's just got that side of his face, that side of his mouth is just a little bit open. You know, this was one take. This was hold my breath and trust myself. And I actually think it came out fab. I couldn't be happy. And this was when I was like, oh, I need to do this video now, right? got to do it. And I think at this point, I immediately got on the phone to our commissions chief, Ben. I was like, oh, Ben, I've just cut a cigar out of a Ratling's mouth. It went really well. But yeah, so we've removed the one cigar. Now we need to add it into the other. And one of the reasons I had chosen that head for the Hannibal character was that he had this slightly open corner of his mouth. I thought, brilliant. And, you know, and he looked that little bit more, you know, in charge, kind of military vibe. So I thought, okay, that'll work. So I looked around various wires I had. None of them were really the right gauge, right thickness. So I found this Imperial Guard comms backpack thing. I don't know whether it's the new Guard kit, the old Guard kit, whatever. The point is I just needed to find a plastic aerial, essentially, that I could shim down to the right thickness. Then again, using a little bit of that plastic glue. The extra thin stuff isn't the best for holding parts together, but when they're tiny like this, it's more than adequate. Then it was in, smush it in. Obviously, I trimmed it down so he didn't look like he had a massive, great cigar in his mouth. But yeah, I thought it ended up looking pretty good. And then lastly, with Hannibal, I felt the other key sort of visual cue with him was he's always got those black gloves on. And none of the Ratlings have got gloves. So I needed to figure out how I was going to do that. So here I've used that extra thin glue again, popped it over the plastic, left it for, 10 seconds or whatever to start melting the plastic. And now I'm just using an old airbrush needle here. You could use a pin, whatever. It's just I have an old airbrush needle. Obviously, we've got our own airbrushes and stuff, so I do have them. And yeah, essentially just gently push into the plastic, start to move it, and create that sort of ridge or seam or cuff. That's the word I'm looking for. Create that cuff on the glove. And again, I think it ended up coming out pretty well, to be honest with you. It's yeah, I love it. Oh, I can't believe it. I love it when a plan comes together. It was genuinely organic. I wasn't planning on sticking that in here. I have also been watching the A-Team this week while doing this video. But yeah, there you go. I guess that's it. Oh man, that's so bad. Right, once they were ready, bit of black primer on them, and then I wanted to use a simple zenithal highlight. And for this, I'm using Tamiya XF2, Tamiya flat white. Tamiya acrylics, you want to use Tamiya's thinner with them because they're a little bit different to your normal water-based acrylics. I find if you just use the proprietary thinner, you're not going to have any problems with them. And a simple zenithal highlight, by which I mean I'm going to spray from above with the white over the black. Now I've thinned that white quite heavily, probably about 4 drops of thinner to paint. So it's a really, really see-through layer of paint. So as I build the layers up, I go through black, through grey, through white. Firstly, just to help me see the details on the model before I paint it. But also I decided what area of the model can I get the most out of my airbrush with on this. And I figured it would be the skin. So first off, I highlighted up the skin to almost pure white. And now we move in and start to actually paint it. So with regards to painting this stuff, I have tried my best to break it down into various sort of chapters, skin, clothing, and then the individual characters themselves. But as I said, this was very much done as a kind of fun project. So it won't be quite as sort of step by step as perhaps some of our other tutorials often are. But I hope I hit a few points that you might find useful with your own hobby. So I've got out some of my paints that I often use for painting skin. I just sort of rifled through them to figure out what ones was I going to use for this set. And I was just going to go for 2 skin tones, obviously the dark skin tone for B.A. Baracus and then the lighter skin tone for the other 3. But I wanted to keep a kind of ruddy skin tone for the other 3, a bit like I've done on my Warhammer Old World Dwarfs. I just think it suits the Ratlings a little bit more. But I'm going to use essentially the same paints on both of them. But we'll start off with BA because he has the largest area of skin on the model. So I knew that this was essentially why I chose to use the airbrush for this step rather than any other bit of the mini. I'm confident with an airbrush, so I like to use it when I'm doing projects. Sometimes it just doesn't have a place. But for this one particularly, because I'd kitbashed him together so he had plenty of his muscles on show. I know it's an efficient way of getting, I find, a very pleasing looking skin on the miniature. So to begin with, I've chosen a 50-50 mix of Rhinox Hide and Bugmans Glow, essentially to give me my mid-tone. Now I've thinned this down probably 3 drops of thinner to paint. You can see it's quite a dilute mix. You see it on my nail there. I'm always spraying about 20 to 25 psi. And I'm using a 0.4mm needle and nozzle in my airbrush. Now you might need to adjust that depending on the environment and in which you're spraying and your setup. Once that was on, I had a nice base layer there, still a little bit of that pre-shade showing through, and then switched up to just using the Rhinox Hide for the shadows. And here I simply flip the model upside down. It may not look like it on the camera, but I'm spraying at this guy from as close to directly below as I can. So just want to catch all those shadows. Again, very, very similar dilution. You know, this paint's almost like a typical wash, like an Agrax or something, consistency. And then for the highlight, I'm just going to use the Bugmans Glow. So these are the two colours that I used for the mid-tone anyway, mixed. Now I'm just using them individually. And this time I'm going to spray almost top down, not all over, but focusing on those areas that are facing sort of directly up, that will catch the light, and areas like the face that we want to draw a little bit of attention to. And other than going in and painting the eyes and correcting any mistakes, that's all I've done for the skin on that character. Then, say for the other three, I was just going to go for the same skin tone on these guys. Again, I'm going to use Bugmans Glow, but this time I'm going to use it as my sort of mid layer, my mid-tone. So we spray it all over. For the shadows, so I want to keep it nice and sort of ruddy. I've chosen a colour here called Shadow's Flesh. I presume they don't still do it because Vallejo have changed recently, but you can see the type of colour that it is. The vast majority of our videos, we try not to be prescriptive with the colours we use. We try just to explain sort of why we use them. And yeah, so I wanted some of that red in the shadows. And then Cadian Flesh tone for the highlight. Again, none of this is complicated. I'm just sort of taking care where I'm spraying it. I'm making sure I'm comfortable. And I'm generally orientating the model rather than the airbrush. So you can see the difference there between the Cadian layer before and after. Just helps pick out that little bit of extra detail. Next up, we've got the clothing. This one was going to be quite important because they're not all going to look the same clothing-wise, unlike stuff we often paint where we're doing gaming. But also their clothing was so intrinsic to their characters, I think, that the sort of the identification of their characters. I kind of wanted to get some of it right. So I decided, obviously I didn't have a topless Ratling. So in the end I decided double denim for BA because it looks pretty cool. I used this dark grey blue colour by Acryl. I liked the colour, but I don't know whether it's the paint or whether I'd thinned the paint potentially too much, but it went super glossy and it was just horrible to look at and I didn't enjoy painting it. So I've just given it a quick matte coat there before I move on. And next I mix into that base blue, just a light off-white blue-grey. I've got Ulthauan there, I've got pale blue-grey, really doesn't matter. And I began stippling this on to create the highlight, but also to create some texture. Not physical texture on the model. You can see how thin that paint is, so it won't leave physical texture, but sort of painted texture to give the fabric some kind of feel to it. Certainly early on in this step, it can look a bit weird, but you just keep going with it. You'll be absolutely fine. You know, nothing you do is going to drastically change, so you can always tweak it backwards and forwards. If you need to glaze a little bit of that original blue back over just to knock everything back, do that too. But you know, it's nothing to be sort of nervous about. And then all I started doing was adding more and more of that pale blue grey in to the highlight, and tried to sort of just pick some areas of focus. So you know, his chest, top of his shoulders, you know, where the light would naturally fall and light the fabric. Yeah, like I say, guys, there's elements this tutorial that are really just kind of me painting. So I hope that's okay. I have touched on certain key areas, things like his bottle of milk and stuff like that. I cover in a more traditional, you know, slower speed. I'll go through it step by step, and that's why this has ended up being a bit of a whopper of a video as well, actually. But I actually think the denim came out pretty cool in the end. And again, I was just sort of looking at photos of it, looking at my jeans myself, just trying to get that idea of what's the difference between the highlight colour on your jeans and the shadow colour. Actually, it's pretty dramatic. You know, jeans often fade, blue jeans. So it gives you that opportunity to do that lovely, quite stark contrast between the light and the shadow. Now, the other thing that Hannibal and Face wear a lot of in the TV show is that real classic sort of 80s khaki shirts and slacks and stuff. So I thought we got to have a go with that. And in the end, I just used Karak Stone. I mixed in a little Thondia to shade it with, and then just worked up to pure Karak Stone. Not dissimilar to the stippling. You can see here I'm just sort of doing sort of scritchy scratches as well, not just sort of the dots. But again, that very, very dilute mix I'm using so that no individual sort of brushstroke's ever going to make that big of an impact on the mini. Also, guys, these minis are tiny, so it takes very, very little time to actually paint them. Really lovely minis, but I've got to be honest with you, the mold lines were shocking on this kit. So I hope they're a bit better when I pick up another one. Murdock was going to be a real challenge clothing wise, because he's got quite a lot of different shirts and things like that. But I sort of, in the end, I decided on that sort of red shirt. I was thinking about doing like a plaid shirt on him, but I was like, no, I'm not sure. So I tried red, and then I realised that the red I'd picked there, whole red, was actually the perfect sausage colour. So scratch that. That's what I'll paint the sausages in. So I just went back to a tried and tested Khorne red, Mephiston red build up for his red shirt. And again, just exactly the same way, base with a Khorne, mix in the Mephiston, start working up. Everything on these minis, guys, these paint jobs I've done is that real simple idea, you know, base, shadow, highlight, mix in a slightly lighter colour to highlight it with, not getting bogged down in particular recipes, because I wasn't going to have to recreate stuff here. You know, generally they all had individual items of clothing, so it just wasn't really too stressed about that. And you know, I'm not painting them, say, to some display level, so it's not like I need to add in any particular nuance or anything. Now I thought I'd touch on the individual characters here where they had genuinely sort of individual bits. So Hannibal, his gloves, I wanted that sort of leather look to his gloves. So I've base coated them just using normal black, and now I'm going to highlight them using a blue black, because the other blacks on the mini, things like the binoculars, the rifle, anything else, I will do with a more neutral grey as a highlight. So I thought if I do more of a blue grey as a highlight on his gloves, it'll make sure that those materials read as being different. And this is what I was on about, guys. Like, I just slinging paint on the palette and pushing it around, and if I needed to highlight it, I just grabbed a lighter colour, a lighter value, and mixed that in. Maybe it was ivory, maybe it was pale blue grey, maybe it was white, you know, or Karak Stone, whatever. It was just what was close and did the job. Now Murdock, as I say, he was a really fun character to do, because he's got that different all the different clothing and stuff. So he's got his cap, he's got his red hat, and then he always wore that really old knackered leather jacket. I thought that would be cool. It's one of the reasons I chose the model that had the cape on it, because I thought, you know, I could paint that like his leather jacket. And also it just seems pretty daft waving a sausage around, right? Gave him the grappling hook, so he looked a bit more like, you know, making up his crazy, contraptions and stuff. But yeah, the cloak was a big reason for it. So I'm starting off with the grey, and I've just chosen that green, that Deathcore Drab, to mix in at various stages just to give it that slightly grey-green vibe. And for this, rather than the stippling, we're sort of sticking particularly to scratches here to create the areas of highlight on the model. Starting off with that sort of a darker colour, we do the nice sort of broad highlights, and then lighter and lighter towards the edges. And you know, with leather, you know, if you ever look at it, you can be really, really striking and stark with the highlights on your leather. And I think it ends up making it read much more realistically on natural anyway. And here I'm just glazing in. So I've thinned the Deathcore Drab right down to almost see-through. And I'm just glazing it in here and there just to give that little green tint to him. So I'd really looked forward to painting BA. He was probably the one I had most fun with hobbying and building him as well. So I wanted to get him right. Now, double denim's a strong look, but I wanted to make sure I got some other fun elements. And quite often, Mr. T would wear, and BA Rackers would wear some interesting prints, some quite colourful prints on items of his clothing. They were kind of like little waistcoat things, or just amazing fashion. But I wanted to try and get that in on the braces. I tried to do sort of different braces on them, just to make them a little bit more interesting. So I just had a look and just drew a few different sort of coloured lines on the braces to try and echo that sort of calling of some of those pretty loud jackets that he wore. And then the bottle of milk was the big one. So I hummed and hawed about how to go about this, and in the end I just Googled a cartoon bottle of milk just to see what it looked like. And essentially I just had to paint a very light blue bottle and then put some white liquid in it. So that's what I went ahead and did. All I needed this to do was read like a bottle of milk. So painted it pale blue to begin with. When the liquid will obviously always be perpendicular to the ground, so he's running with it. So I need to make the level of the liquid parallel to the ground. So we just draw that line in now across it. The pale blue I just had blues on my palette from doing his denim and white. So I just started doing mixes of them to create this. You notice when I was doing the painting the initial blue in, I was doing lots and lots of sort of vertical lines down the bottle, and I've deliberately left them a little bit patchy because I thought it looked quite cool. I thought it kind of helped sell the glass look. So that was a very deliberate decision of how to approach applying the paint, putting the brushstrokes on that mini. But yeah, so just a case of painting around the line of where the top of the milk would be, liquid would be in the bottle. I really love painting glass bottles and vials and things, and I don't do them very often. So this was super fun. Get to have a go with BA here. And now we need to paint the liquid itself. So we've painted the bottle. Actually, it's not a huge amount of the bottle showing, really. It's just the neck and that little bit there near the sort of shoulder of it. So now we lighten it up. So I'm adding more of the white into the mix and repeating the steps. You see, sort of pulling the vertical lines down, leaving them a tiny bit patchy, just, I guess, suggests that kind of reflected light and loads of refracted light and loads of reflections and things in it. I'm quite surprised how effective this ended up being for what was this is all real time. It was a couple of minute paint job really, which was lovely. I wanted to go in and make sure that the line itself, so when I was looking at those cartoon pictures of it, the line of the liquid in the bottle was always super bright. So I've gone in there at almost pure white I've used at that point, just to reinforce that line. Less so with the liquid underneath it. I am going to go in and lighten up the liquid underneath it again. But you can see this is a sort of, not back and forth stage, but I'm not trying to do anything in one go here. Just building it up. So you see here, and I'm pulling this final sort of light colour towards the bottom of the bottle to be that sort of brightest part as the light's leaving it. And just left it a little bit, so a few areas of slightly darker up towards the liquid line. And then the last thing to do was just put a few reflection points on the bottle itself to sort of try and sell that glass effect, just like we do on gems, where we put that little reflection dot. So it was just in with the pure white at this point. So that was why I hadn't gone up to pure white at any stage. Also, I wanted to have that kind of blue glass look to the bottle. And now it's just a case of thinking, okay, what is this? Well, it's a cylinder. So the highlight line will run the length of the cylinder. We'll have a little dot at the top where the shoulder curves over. So a few little white dots there. And then a nice white line running down the length of that cylinder of the glass bottle, just to help sell it. And then spread that light out a touch at the bottom edge as well. And obviously make sure we do it on the other side of the glass bottle as well. So on the neck there, and just on the shoulder bit, a few little dots. Let's say, not trying to win any prizes here, but when you look at it, do you think, oh, it kind of looks like a bottle of milk? Job done. Very, very, very happy with how that one came out. And of course, there's one other thing that I haven't done that is a real calling card, a real identifying bit of BA, which is his jewellery. I'd left this, I was going to put this on at the end because I just thought it'd be a bit awkward to paint him. I said they're really tiny models. So I've used this chain here. Now, I use this chain when I'm doing things like my Titanicus stuff. It's from a company called Tiddlywinks. I assume they're still going. I bought this probably a year or so ago, maybe 18 months ago. Not affiliated with them whatsoever, but it's a great product. And the reason I like the product so much, one is it comes in tiny, tiny gauges, but also it comes black. So you don't need to black it out before you put your metals and stuff over it, which is fantastic. So all I did was cut some lengths, drape them around his neck, use a little bit of super glue. I wish I had thinner super glue. I think this would have worked a little bit better with thinner super glue. This thick stuff kept grabbing it and moving it, which was a bit annoying. And again, I'm sure it's not the best way of doing this. But this was just a bit of fun, bit of kit bashing and stuff, and just have a giggle and get it going. And so in the end, I just used cocktail stick and this thicker glue to get it looking, get it sat roughly where I wanted it. And now it was time to finish them off. Really, they'd all got their individual bits done on them. I was really happy with where I was at with it, but I do want to play with these models. So I kind of want them to fit in with all the rest of my kill team stuff to kind of have that same finish. So I would do consistent basing with them and a little bit of oils. Now, I featured the basing in a lot more detail in the Solar Auxilia video that I will link up the top. But a few of you had asked about it when I did it on the Death Guard. So this is just the process. I use dry ground. This is a basing product by AK. Thin it down with a little bit of water. It's also acts as an adhesive, so you can push in tufts, you can push things like that into this step. And here I've just got a bit of crushed up fossils from my garden, just to add a little bit more colour and texture to the base. I sprinkle that on, leave it to dry. And I do this at the end of a hobby session when I'm going to apply oils as well, because I just like to leave them overnight to dry. They don't need overnight to dry, but there's no harm in it. It feels like a natural end. So here they are, all ready for just those final finishing touches. So a little bit of a re-highlight here or there on some of the metals. Maybe I go in and check I've done the eyes correctly and they don't look too daft. And then just a little bit of oil paint here and there just to adjust that finish on the model. I really love the finish that oil paint gives you. So what I mean by that is when the oil paint dries, it has a particular look. And I really like that look. So here I've taken Sepia, which is very dark brown oil, the Sepia by Abteilung 502. I've thinned it down with odorless mineral spirits. I've tried to thin this about 50-50. You don't want to thin it too much more than that or it might start to split. So you can see here on this plastic sprue, really, really nice, loose dilute wash, but it's not breaking up. And then I go in, the model is dry, so I haven't got to varnish it. I haven't got to worry about anything paint reacting or anything. That the whole model is completely dry. So I go in with an old natural hair brush because it's still got a decent point on it, but it's not quite good enough for normal painting. It will get ruined ultimately because of the thinners, but it's fine for a good long while yet. And I'm just going in and doing the odd area with the oil. I'm not going to do the whole model. I'm certainly not going to do the skin. I don't want to change that finish to the skin. And there we go. They're done. And I think they look pretty good, if I'm honest. As I said earlier, my mind has been elsewhere on a few other projects. We've had the Kickstarter going on. I've got a Lord of the Rings video I'm working on that I'm really keen to do right. It's my first Lord of the Rings one. It's something I really love. And consequently, maybe I didn't give these guys as much attention as they deserved. I kept coming back to the desk and leaving and doing something else, the MPO judging, all these sorts of things. But I think they read as what I wanted them to be. I think if you glanced at them, you'd know what they were trying to represent. I want to go and finish the rest of the kill team up, although goodness knows what I've actually got left. I've snipped up an awful lot of bits and bobs to create these with, but I'm sure I can get a kill team. As I say, I'll be picking up another squad of these when they come out to add in, and some Ogrins, which is amazing. So yeah, really keen on that. If you're enjoying the kill team stuff, I'll link up in the top some of those other videos I've been doing for it, because it's really reinvigorating my hobby. It's a lovely way to stay hobbying in 40k, create videos for you guys and have some fun, which is, after all, what this is all about, really, isn't it? If you'd like to see the orcs from this set, let me know. I quite fancy doing them, but I wasn't quite sure if they were of interest to enough people. So let me know in the comments, because they're a really cool kit, and I think we could have some fun with those. I'll see if I can fit those in before Christmas. If you've got any questions about anything I've done in the video, please pop them down in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks ever so much for all of your support. Take care, and I'll see you next time. If you've liked any of the models in this video and you fancy having an army of them yourself, but perhaps you don't have the time or wherewithal to get it done, consider dropping us an email at commissions@cultofpaint.com, and maybe Ben can sort you out.